A lot of
Yeah.
people think I'll just get on the right hormones and all this will line up. And it doesn't work that way. You need to have the lifestyle piece in place.
Hmm.
You've got to have your diet dialed in. You've got to be sleeping well. You've got to be managing stress. And then when you've got that in line, you can start adding in some HRT, and you need to do it slowly so you can tell what's working and what's not working. Because sometimes people will see their labs and they'll think, oh, my estrogen's fine, but they're having all the vasomotor symptoms. They're It's not fine. So you have to find a doctor that's really going to work side by side with you. So that's what happened to me.
Hi, it's Morgan Michael, and this is Hindsight 101, where you're going to get practical strategies for designing a life that inspires you, one life edit at a time. Hello, and welcome to Hindsight 101 with me, your host, Morgan Michael. And I'm here with Maggie Topham, and she is a certified health coach. But not only that, she's someone who is a spokesperson for functional health in the online world, which is what we need right now, specifically with a flair around menopause and how to take care of ourselves, into our late 30s and up into and past menopause. So, Maggie, I'm just so delighted to have you here on the show today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So I first, was drawn into the work that you do through Instagram, as many of us sort of, scroll and we learn. And I've developed sort of a new interest in women's health, specifically as we get older. And I love fitness. A lot of my listeners know this. I'm an avid gym goer. I love to lift. It's important to me. And I've learned over time that this is a really important piece of keeping ourselves healthy. And, there are so many benefits to this. But before we get into that, can you just give us a little brief overview of what you're about, what your sort of overall vision and mission is when you do your work?
Well, sure. I've been into my whole life. I've been into fitness. My mom was a fitness instructor when I was growing up. At age 15, she threw me in front of a bunch of people and said, "You're going to teach this step aerobics class." So my whole life, I've been into fitness. How misguided we were on what was actually healthy for us is a little troublesome, but we all dove in head first
Yes.
and did a bunch of cardio and cut out fat. And anyway, I spent my life in a leotard, and I was always a dancer. I raced and marathons, triathlons, but I have over the course of my life gained and lost the same 50 pounds. This will be my fifth time. So that's over 200 pounds that I have gained and lost. And I would lose it, and within 6, 8 months, it was back. And I was at a stage of my life where I just didn't want to do that anymore. And my health was declining, and I had my first grandbaby coming. I had spent 27 years on antidepressants, and I thought, I got to go about this a different way. And so this time when I dove in, it wasn't about getting skinny. It
Mm.
was about getting healthy. And it's amazing what happened when I went at it from that lens, because being strong and healthy has gotten me to a size that I prefer, but that was never my goal. So that's where I'm at. It is about being healthy. Your body will innately be the size it needs to be to function well in this world if you give it what it needs.
Oh, this is such an important message because I think for so long, and our society does this, but we've done this to ourselves as well, is that we berate ourselves for wherever we hope or wish we were, but we're not. And we look outside of ourselves. We look on social media, or we're looking on billboards, and we're seeing this idealized vision of what it is to be a woman, and it doesn't account for functional health, and it sends sort of a message of unattainable. It's an unattainable goal. And then for what purpose? And what we're realizing, and what the research is starting to say, is that in fact, being skinny is not healthy, because necessarily, because we might have a propensity to break bones more frequently when we're older, or all sorts of different things. So can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the myths? Let's start with the myths around what you mentioned, this high cardio, the high aerobic kind of, doing a lot of that when in order to burn fat, when really we're starting to see a shift. Can you speak to that?
I would say one of the, and you've touched on a lot of them just barely. One of them for sure is that our body is a calorie calculator. And especially now with all the wearables we have, someone's watching their watch. I see them at the gym. They'll be on the treadmill for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and they're just watching. They want to get that 700 calories burn so they can have the sweet roll, or they can, have the M&Ms.
Yeah.
What they think their body's a calorie calculator, and not really. And also the whole macros, if it fits within your macros, that has, which I think there's a lot of wisdom to that, but people have overcorrected with that, and they're not really fueling their body well. So that's causing a lot of harm, I think, because people are just looking for those macros, not actually fueling your body with the nutrition it needs. And that's
yeah. So
that's what it's about.
let's pull this out a little bit, because I love the concept of macros, but some people might be like, what are macros? So macros are, and tell the difference between kind of filling that macro level, and then maybe being more intentional about the types of food is what I'm
Yes.
thinking, right? Yeah. Tell
And
me
that's
more.
usually where I start with my clients. They
Yeah.
always say, okay, what's my macro countdown? And I try to steer them away from that at first. And we really focus on nutrients before we focus on macros, because I don't want them to go down that road. They go through the aisle, not the outskirts where all the box food. And if it says macro friendly, it goes in their cart.
Right.
And that's not where we want to be. That's not going to get rid of cravings. That's to raise their ghrelin levels. That's your hunger hormone, and it's going to deplete their leptin. Like they're just not going to have the nutrients they need. They're not going to get rid of their cravings. They're not going to be fueling their body or creating muscle protein synthesis, where they're actually putting on muscle.
Okay, this is
very
huge.
nutrient dense foods. Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
So I really try to steer them toward. At first, we just go for protein, high quality protein. I'm not against protein shakes, especially as women. It's hard to fit in a lot of protein, but we try and go for, let's eat some whole food and get our essential amino acids that way.
Nice. Okay, so we're talking meats if we can, if we can do meats.
If you're not against it, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of plant-based people who have the knowledge they need to get in enough protein, but it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And like I do like to start my day with a shake, but I do, what I've been doing, which is crazy, is egg whites, and you can't really taste them. And it's working.
No, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's so good. And then I get, I'm getting a lot of protein in the morning, but this is something that I haven't always done. And it's made a tremendous difference also in making me not as hungry throughout the morning. So I think there's something to be said for when you feed your body quality food and nutrients, that it helps you sustain that energy and that vitality throughout the day too, which again, back to that functionalism, we want to be able to have a day where we have the stamina and we can do our jobs and we feel generally energized throughout the day. I think most of us want that. We want to feel generally happy. And I think a lot of that comes down to, how do we fuel our bodies, and are we being mindful of whole foods? Because like you said, like you can hit your fat goal or your carb goal or your protein goal, and you could do that, by hitting McDonald's or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's not everybody, anybody who eats fast food knows that feeling right after, where you're like, oh, really regret that choice. It didn't feel so good.
Yes. And I see so many of these cute little influencers, and they're eating their Chick-fil-A and it's fitting within their macros. And I just want to just give them a hug and say, in 10 years, this isn't going to work out very well, but keep it up till then, enjoy your time. And then we'll talk.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about this time horizon thing. So as we have been learning, many of us have been learning through experts like Dr. Mary Claire Haver, who are, she particularly is an absolute expert in the field of menopause. But we're seeing that this whole, many people have this idea that menopause kind of hits at a certain age, say like 50, and then that's it. But what we're starting to realize is there's sort of a merge lane, and it's pretty big. It's like 7 to 10 years of this perimenopause period. And so let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the shifts that we tend to see. You can even speak a little bit maybe to your own experience, because that's been significant, right? And a lot of my friends and family colleagues are going through this right now.
And so many people they're like, I'm 35. That's not perimenopause, but come to find out, it probably is. So it's funny. I've always had a dance studio. I haven't for the last 20 years, but I'm running into old students now, or they're getting a hold of me. They're like, what is going on with me? Because they're just hitting their mid 30s. And I'm like, how are you? You were 18 just barely. How are you 35?
Yeah.
But usually what starts to decline very first is their sleep kind of starts to go. And they're also right smack dab in the middle of raising kids. So it's hard to tell what is going on. I'm depressed, I'm not sleeping well, I'm putting weight on in weird places. And really, 35 is a great time. A lot of doctors won't even do a hormone lab at 35 because they say you don't need it yet. But you actually do, because we want to know what was going on at 35. We want a good baseline. And then also, if we are running low, we want to know now. Let's get on top of it. So when we do start to merge into the fast lane, we are prepared and it's going to go a lot smoother. So usually progesterone is the first thing to go. They usually start having heavier periods, way more PMS, breast tenderness, and it's just a little bit of transdermal progesterone usually goes a long way, kind of helps them get into the next phase where their estrogen starts to drop off.
Right. And then let's talk about that. So I learned so much in this last sort of 3-month period around estrogen. I didn't know that our muscles have estrogen receptors, that there are certain organs in our bodies that have estrogen receptors. So this is really not just about hot flashes. It goes way beyond that. Like we're learning that we have sore shoulders, the frozen shoulder thing, that we have brain fog, all of this comes down to estrogen depletion. Can you speak to that and how maybe as we do kind of get closer to menopause, what that does to our bodies when we have estrogen depletion like that?
Yes. So, and it's funny, a lot of women tend to think they all say I'm estrogen dominant. And usually this is so confusing because estrogen dominance is usually more of a problem with xenoestrogens and more toxins in our body. It's not necessarily our usable estrogen. So there's a big differentiation and a confusion with that. However, your body producing estrogen, probably the first thing that starts to happen, your body just starts changing. You become a little more androgen dominant, so you kind of start to be shaped more like your husband maybe than you were as a curvy 18-year-old. Get a little thicker around the middle. You just start to have, I can just look at people now and I think, if I could just shoot her up with a little estrogen. I want to all the time so bad. And I know there's a lot of people who are still scared to death of because of the Women's Health Initiative and how that has been. That's a whole other podcast, I'm sure. But so many people and their doctors are still so stuck on this and not offering women just such a simple cure for all of these symptoms that they're going through. A lot of times they get a sleeping pill and an antidepressant and are sent on their way.
Is burnout, overwhelm, and low motivation holding your team back? Well, I help people like you in education, the corporate world, and in healthcare to regain a sense of themselves through simple life edits. All you have to do to transform your team is contact me for your next workshop or keynote.
Yes. And that you bring up the Women's Health Initiative, that was just for a little background for anyone who isn't familiar. There was a problematic study. I think it was maybe in the 80s. Is that right?
It actually lasted all the way to you can read so many different things because when people started to pull it apart, but it was like early 2000s, late 1990s, I think. Right. So it really wasn't that long ago.
No, but it was problematic because their control trials were weird and they wouldn't have women with hot flashes because they didn't want them to, wouldn't be a randomized control and they'd be aware when they were on this particular hormone replacement. So then they were like, well, we got to phase those people out. How can you do a study on women when they're not, having hot flash? Like it just wasn't an accurate study.
And the average age was like 62.
That's right.
I think more than half of them or around half were smokers. It was just a bad study. And
that
we put a
study.
lot of merit into it, and it
Yes.
caused a lot of people some sadness.
That's right. And then
Yes.
ultimately people came out with the misinformation that HRT, hormone replacement therapy, is bad for you and can cause, various different ailments and things.
Yeah,
So,
breast cancer and uterine cancer. And that's
right.
been
Yeah. And so that's
that.
very problematic. So people are scared of that. And so they stay away from it. So there's a lot of new research that's coming out that actually points in the opposite direction. Can you speak to a little bit of your own experience? Because I know that you've had quite a transformation. You've mentioned like a few different transformations over the course of your life, right? But this one was notable, and you attribute a lot of that to obviously like a healthy lifestyle and your diet and everything. But can you talk about the hormone replacement aspect of that
Yes.
as well?
Well, I think a lot of people too, just let me give this little caveat first. A lot of
Yeah.
people think I'll just get on the right hormones and all this will line up. And it doesn't work that way. You need to have the lifestyle piece in place. You've got to have your diet dialed in. You've got to be sleeping well. You've got to be managing stress. And then when you've got that in line, you can start adding in some HRT, and you need to do it slowly so you can tell what's working and what's not working. Because sometimes people will see their labs and they'll think, oh, my estrogen's fine, but they're having all the vasomotor symptoms. It's not fine. So you have to find a doctor that's really going to work side by side with you. So that's what happened to me. I pretty much had diet lined up, lifestyle lined up. I was lifting weights. Things were going good. Mental health. I was getting off my antidepressants and nothing. Some people need those. My doctor, for me at the time, we should have been making some other choices. So I was just healthier than I'd been in a long time. And I thought I'm still not feeling as good as I should. So we started filling in the gaps very slowly so we could tell what was working. And that's the first thing I started with was a little progesterone. I thought that I feel great. Awesome. So then we started balancing things out with some estrogen, and eventually my testosterone dropped. And so now I'm on all of them, little DHEA. So, and I manage, I'm still not all the way through menopause. I'm still in that perimenopause. So I still use the transdermal. So it's easier for me to manage my dosage that way. And I'm not stuck with the dose because I'm still that's the fun part. It's the roller coaster of perimenopause. So I'm able to really watch that. And I know now enough. Oh, I'm on too much progesterone. I start getting tired, brain foggy, and I can pull back a little. So
that's so interesting.
That's how I roll. And some people, they may not know enough to do it that way, but if they find a doctor that works closely with them, it's a nice little, the roller coaster evens out a bit.
Well, you know what? That's really optimistic, because I think that's good news for people, because I think a lot of us are feeling, or I know people around me who are like, I just can't believe how cranky I am these days. Why do I not care as much? Why do I have no motivation? Why is it that I'm having such a difficult time sleeping, or suddenly super anxious thoughts, or what might have been, a fun date night for you? You have absolutely no interest, all of that factors in. And I think if you're going check, it's worth checking out. And I think for me with this podcast, while I'm really gearing this toward educators, a lot of the work that I do is around burnout. And what I'm realizing is some of these burnout symptoms can be attributed at a particular age to, and obviously gender, right? To perimenopause, right? And that's something that I just had never considered. And so what if we could just rule some things out, and have a conversation with the doctor and see if we can iron some of these things out in a very doable way. And that doesn't, I think sometimes it feels like a life sentence, right? Where we can actually have a bit of control over this. And when I speak to people, and I do a lot of coaching and I do some keynotes, when I speak about this piece, a lot of women are like, wait, what? And they don't know. And so it's really great to sit down with somebody who knows about this, who has experienced this herself, and really to be leading the way that way. So thank you for that.
You're sure welcome. And you touched on something so important, and that is suicide rates from age 45 to 55 that's not a coincidence. That is when women are having a really hard time. So I just love that you're shining some light on this, especially this month, Menopause Month, because I think there's so many women that this could really be life-changing for them. So thank you for spreading the word.
Yeah,
Good for you.
and wow, you know what? That gave me chills because I will be honest, I hadn't considered that angle. And I think when we feel like we've lost a sense of who we are, that's where we feel so deeply disconnected from that identity. I think as women, many of us who are lucky or want the journey of, having children, we experience a significant identity change at that point. And then this is an additional identity change to a point, which comes as a surprise, I think, to many of us because we don't talk about it. So I love the idea of casting a light and talking to people and going, this is normal. And we can have some impact on it. Before we sort of, close the conversation, because I think this piece was really important, I want to talk a little bit about the fitness element. And I think on your page, you talk very specifically about some of the really great research-based practices around fitness that I think we can all be doing. So we've done a little bit on the macros. You talk about, sprint interval training. You demonstrate on your Instagram, you doing it, which I think is so great. It's one thing to talk about it, you're actually doing it. And some of that tough love, around what it means to get in that gym or find a way to be able to do this consistently. Because I think, if I can just say this piece, I think that discipline is self-love. And I think being able to be committed to that overall behavior that then that's attached to those results, that's self-love, right? And so I'd love to talk to you a little bit about that and what you'd recommend.
Oh, I love that.
Mhm.
I think another aspect of self-love is realizing that discomfort causes adaptation. And we're so used to always looking to feel comfortable. We're taught to feel comfortable. Do what works for you. No, sometimes you have to do what's hard. And that's okay. And doing sprints is horrible. It's so hard.
Yeah.
It is so hard. But man, it sure feels good when you're done. And I sure didn't think, I really thought the last time I ran as fast as I could was when I chased my kid out into the street, 20 years ago. I did not think I was ever going to push my body that hard. All it took was someone saying, though, no, you can do this. I thought, really? Like I can run? And we are our bodies are amazing. If we give our bodies the tools it needs, it will amaze you. So do it. Give your body try it out. See how you do. You'll be amazed and you'll walk out of the gym feeling confident and strong and feeling like you can take on the world. So let yourself be uncomfortable and adapt to it. I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned is discomfort is not serving you well. Or comfort is not serving you well.
Yeah.
So we need to let ourselves lean into that.
And I think you've highlighted that whole idea of the change we want really is about doing the things that we're avoiding, right? Like that's where the shift happens. And I totally agree. And maybe it's not accessible for everyone to just do an uphill sprint or to do 25 box jumps or to do, pull-ups or any of these things that can be really tricky. What would you recommend to people might be a good entry point to start being more consistently active? Maybe if maybe currently it's
I
more
say
sedentary.
Just up it a notch. I have clients that they come home from work and they watch Netflix for 4 to 5 hours. So if you're getting 500 steps a day, just get 1,000. Just up it a notch. Push your body. And once you do that, it's really easy to up it a notch the next week. Just up it a notch. And I think that, and a lot of people make comments. They're like, not all of us can do box jumps. I am well aware of that. It took me 5 years to get to that. I was out jumping on the trampoline just barely with my little grandkids a couple of years ago and thought and now I can jump up on boxes. So it is possible if you push your body hard enough, start slow enough. The last thing we want is an injury. Yeah. So if all you need to do is just jump up onto your toes and back down, if for your sprints, all you're doing is walking up a hill, that's fantastic. That is just as hard for you as sprints are for me at this point. I was there, now I'm here. So that's what people need to really just do what pushes you enough.
I love that so much. And I think that this this is really what that spectrum of being fit is. It's like you don't necessarily arrive at any given point. You just kind of inch along. I love that, up in a notch until you feel like you're at a place that you feel, proud and comfortable and most yourself, right? At the end of the day, can you move with your grandchildren? Can you go for a walk with your dog and do that comfortably? That's what it's about. And it's about quality of life, right? We don't want to be in a place where we can't enjoy our life due to health reasons. We want to be able to say, if we're in Italy or something, you want to go up those hills, you want to be able to do that comfortably. So yeah, that's great. Maggie, where can people find you right now, online and otherwise?
My Instagram is funk_health, and funk is with a C. My website is integrative-health-coach.com.
Perfect.
And those are the two. That's where I'm most active, are those places. But yeah, that's where I am.
And you're doing online coaching. So if women wanted to, or men, who were interested in learning more.
I do a lot of couples, men and women together. So that's fun.
And what I always say too, actually, on that note is when I'm doing a keynote and I mention anything about menopause, I say, men, don't shut your ears to this, because you might be with somebody who's going through this and you're going to want to know the signs. You can be a participant in what that looks like and a supportive participant in that. So I think that's a key part to keep in mind.
So important.
Yeah, for sure. Maggie, thank you so much for joining me today on Kindsight 101. Is there anything that you want to add, or a message for women that you want to leave us off with?
Just that there's hope. There's hope. I feel like at this time of my life, the fun's just starting. So I want them to know I didn't feel hope. I thought, oh, this is it. I hope my marriage makes it. I hope I can stay at my job, and the fun's just happening. Marriage is great. I feel energetic about my job. You can get your drive back. So don't throw in the towel, because there's help out there. The fun's just starting.
I love that message. I think that's so, so amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me today. And please keep in touch, because I think it would be so great to work together in the future in this realm. I think it's really exciting.
Well, it's been such a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Kindsight 101 with me, your host, Morgan Michael. It has been an absolute pleasure. I always learn so much, but really, I want to hear what you've learned. Please find me on social media by searching Morgan Michael and reach out. I always love to hear from people.